Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Tonight's Merseyside derby will be the last ever at Goodison Park, and there have been some absolute belters in the past. So, what are Everton losing in moving from Goodison Park? And what are the benefits of football clubs switching to a new home? With us today, we have our Everton correspondent Paddy Boyland, senior writer Rory Smith, and former Arsenal midfielder Adrian Clarke as well. Gents, let's get into it. The Merseyside derby at Goodison Park tonight, an important one in terms of the title ramifications. I said it in a previous podcast. This is going to be heated.
I think they want to sign off at Goodison with a famous win. Let's be honest, some of the best memories created at Goodison Park for this generation of supporters have been nights or days where they've stayed up, they survived. You have to go way back really to the 80s for the glory days of Everton and for those real cherished memories. They've got an opportunity, haven't they, in this game to create one of the greatest memories in the history of the famous stadium, to beat Liverpool, to potentially damage or derail or damage Liverpool's title chances. What opportunity knocks for them, but with that comes pressure, doesn't it? So will the players be able to bring their A game, I wonder. So yeah, it's a huge game actually for both teams. Everton players know they need to win or perform for the supporters to give them something to take away. And Liverpool, a win and they're almost there.
Yeah, it's not like an Arsenal fan, Adrian, to be wishing derailment of Liverpool right now, right? With the Everton
Yeah,
fans.
guilty as charged. Yeah.
I can see, I still right through it. Paddy, you joined us at a perfect time. We're talking about the Merseyside derby tonight. So good to have you with us. I mean, how beautiful would that be for Everton to derail Liverpool's title hopes this season? I mean, they're still pretty comfortable up there, but it would be very special historically anyway.
It would be, of course, yeah. And I think actually, if you'd asked most Evertonians, they would have quite liked to finish the Goodison derbies last season with the April victory. Just draw a line on it there and let's be done with it. I mean, it is an opportunity in a number of senses, of course. It's an opportunity to give Goodison a proper derby farewell. It's also a chance for Everton to, in what is effectively a free hit of a game, their game in hand, to go, I think, 12 points clear of relegation. And then finally, of course, another important one, dent Liverpool's title hopes. So, I mean, kind of a historic, monumental occasion, and everybody's really looking forward to it.
I was thinking about my favourite moments at Goodison Park, and obviously I'm not an Everton fan, but one of my most memorable moments was Wayne Rooney. I mean, it was a win for Everton. He came on as a substitute. I think he was 16 years old, announces himself to the world with an absolute banger from outside the box, a superb volley. I know so many fans remember that. But for you, Paddy, what are your favourite moments, or give us one favourite moment from Goodison Park?
Yeah, I think that the one that encapsulates everything that Goodison is about at its very best for me was the 3-2 against Crystal Palace a couple of seasons ago under Frank Lampard. I mean, just bedlam from start to finish. You've got the depths of despair at 2-0 down at half time when everybody is thinking Everton are done here and they're going to be in the Championship next season. An amazing comeback, in part inspired by Dele Alli, his kind of one major telling contribution at Goodison. And then the scenes at full time, I mean, the sheer relief, but then what that spilled into kind of Frank Lampard up on the director's box with fans jumping about as kind of fans swarm the pitch, and you have the players singing songs with the supporters. I mean, I got out of the stadium probably about midnight and walked around Goodison. And it was like a post-apocalyptic scene. It was like you had kind of pyro stains everywhere, just litter everywhere. It looked like there'd been a big. I mean, you could spin it a couple of ways, but it looked like a big party in one sense. And I will always remember that. And you'll have certain fans who say you shouldn't be celebrating Everton just staying up, and of course I agree. But just in terms of the atmosphere that night and what Goodison can be at its very best and how it helps the team in tough moments, I think that was quite a big symbolic one for me.
What about you, Rory?
my first kind of permanent job was as the Telegraph's Merseyside correspondent. So I went to Anfield one week and then Goodison the next. And despite my kind of personal loyalties to the other side of Merseyside, I am of course, like we all are, a professional. And you meet people who are Everton fans, you meet people who work for the club, you get to know some of the players, some of the staff. And I've ever since then had a slightly tense soft spot for Everton, except when they play Liverpool, when I was there, I want Liverpool to win. But I don't have a lot of the traditional kind of hostility towards Everton. And Goodison at its best is a truly remarkable stadium. And there's a kind of running joke about the Goodison boo. And I think when Goodison's unhappy, I think it is probably quite a difficult place for Everton players to play. But when times are good and when the team are when they exist on that really delicate axis that Evertonians seem to want between the School of Science and the Dogs of War, when they have a team that lives up to those two definitions of what Everton are, it is, as Paddy says, it is chaotic and noisy and passionate and intimidating in a good way. And I think the last time I went for a game of any real significance was the 1-0 win against, I think, Bournemouth, when Decore scored to keep them up on the final day of the season. And there's the sense of relief when that goal went in, that, another kind of great escape wasn't really a great escape. It was quite a good escape, really. It wasn't, they were never in that much peril. But the sense of relief, the sense of joy in the sunshine, reminded you of all those amazing nights at Goodison, and it has that ability to create those moments in a way that I think only the truly old, historic, traditional stadiums can. And Goodison has a place in history. It's the first purpose-built football stadium in England. It is a part of English football's fabric, and I think you feel that in those moments.
What about you, Adrian?
Yeah, it's a beautiful stadium. I love it. I love the fact that the press box is absolutely tiny. There's no leg room. It was built for much smaller people. Not that I'm very tall.
Exactly. At your height, Adrian, that's easy to say.
Exactly.
A compact individual like yourself, that's fine.
Well, oh, come on, that's harsh. Compact is not something I've been described as, but I'll take it. I'll take it on the chin from you, Rory. Look, having posts in the way, it's all part of the fun and games, isn't it? You're in amongst the fans; they can pretty much hear what you're saying when you're commentating. I was there for Ancelotti's first game. That was quite surreal. It's Ancelotti. Is he really in that technical area down there? It was quite remarkable, really. But yeah, I love the ground. Memories wise, it's mainly from watching on the TV. I haven't got any stunning memories of being there on any famous night. I remember the Andy Johnson derby where he scored a brace, and the third goal to sort of seal it. I don't know if you remember this. Lee Carsley smacks one, Pepe Reina spills it, and then he reclaims it, and he thinks he's going to carry the ball into the net, and he chucks it in the air, which is a bizarre thing to do. And then Andy Johnson nods it in, and Goodison just goes absolutely wild. That's something that really stands out in my mind, as does probably that. But was it the Barry Horn goal that kept them up back in the 90s? I think 94, wasn't it? What a goal! Top bins on the volley from 30 yards. So there's been some amazing moments, and I'm sad to see it go. Really am. It's I think a lot of people will miss it that aren't Everton fans.
Yeah, do you know what? There's an incredible stat. I think it was for women's football. I think it was the 1920 Dick Kerr's ladies beat St Helens ladies 4-0 at Goodison Park. 53,000 people turned up for that, and I don't think that was ever rivaled in terms of attendance for women's football for years, over 100 years. So I mean, such a special stadium and so much history there. Right, let's move to the present, Paddy. Let's talk about the new stadium where Everton fans will be playing their football very soon. Apparently, the club say the search for the new stadium started in 1998. Oh, where do we go from here? Talk to us about that.
It's been quite a journey to get here. Multiple failed stadium attempts, and the one when I was growing up was down at the King's Dock site, which is closer to the centre of the city, and that collapsed pretty late in the day, and in very typical Everton style, very dramatic, almost out of nowhere seemingly. And since then, it has been a kind of a long, arduous journey to get to where we are right now. I mean, one thing you've got to say is, like, they've done this in a really challenging climate. when you think about the geopolitical situation. Everton's links with Russian sponsors who were then going to provide a naming rights deal that would have in effect funded the final tranche of the development. They've done it while the owner was looking to sell. I've had to bring in loads of short-term loans to just get through on a day-to-day basis. But it's there and it's done, and it's an architectural feat as well. They've built a new stadium, a new state-of-the-art facility right on the dock in Liverpool, in the dock, having to kind of fill the dock with loads of sand from dredge it up from elsewhere. And we're nearly there now. I mean, Monday the 17th, I will be at a test event, the first test event at the new stadium, where Everton under 18s will be playing a game. I think there'll be a capacity of around 10,000 there, and they ramp those numbers up as we go through the test events. But we're nearly there now, and the sense of anticipation has really built. For quite a long time, it's been common to hear Everton supporters saying things like, "This is brilliant, but are we going to be intact as a Premier League club when we get there?" And the finish line is in sight now, so people can start to get a little bit excited. They are, as Rory's piece detailed so magnificently the other week, they are picking their season tickets as we speak and making plans for it all. So yeah, very, very exciting, I think.
Well, like the big one we always talk about is the money, right? From when this stadium was earmarked to where it's at now. I mean, inflation, cost of living, everything's changed over time. I mean, how are they affording it?
Yeah, so the plans have changed numerous times, I think it's fair to say. The initial one was for a mix of debt and equity. So Moshiri would fund bits of it, and then the final bit would be senior debt secured from lenders elsewhere, and then they would also have a stadium naming rights package with Alisher Usmanov's megaphone to complete the package. Obviously, those plans had to be scrapped. Those sponsorship deals were suspended initially indefinitely and then cancelled. So they've had to find a way through by hook or by crook. Moshiri did a lot of this himself out of his own pocket. And we have to remember that for all his flaws, and there were many, he has helped play a significant role in getting this stadium over the line. The other bit has been, as I alluded to earlier, a succession of short-term, high-interest loans to keep up with the payment schedule to builders Lango Rourke. And I think it's fair to say it's been dicey at times, it's been hairy, and the club has struggled to meet all its costs. The Freaking Group have come in, the new owners have come in at a really important time now. They can capitalise on the commercial opportunities the stadium brings, increased revenue, but they have also played a pretty small role in the very final part of it all. They have provided the final funding to complete the internal fit out of the stadium, which is taking place right now. I mean, we're nearly there. We're about 99% done in that stadium right now.
Okay, Rory, Paddy makes a really interesting point. This commercial revenue, this new stadium will be bringing. I just saw Aston Villa announce that Kendrick Lamar's going to be there. I mean, I'm a Midlander. Kendrick Lamar coming to Birmingham is massive. So are we going to start seeing this up there? You know, big concerts. I mean, we've seen what's happening at Spurs. This is the model of a new stadium, all that commercial revenue, and hopefully we see some tastier players on the pitch, maybe.
Yeah, so I think that does seem to be part of the thinking. We've seen an increase in the high profile concerts at Anfield in the last few years. It's not something that either ground has traditionally done. I think, you know, Spurs, the Emirates, various places in Manchester have kind of got a bit more tradition of using their stadiums as concert venues, which I think is, you know, what we all want as fans. Paddy might know, but Taylor Swift did at least one night in Liverpool, maybe two last year at Anfield, and you can see Everton. I'm saying that just Paddy's, you know, on Merseyside, not just he's a massive Swiftie, although he might be. I don't know.
Fair enough.
But Paddy, it's safer just to say you're a Swiftie, because otherwise the use just isn't worth it. Yeah, I think it's something that clubs are exploring, and Everton, you would expect partly because of the size of it, partly because it's new, partly because it's in a brilliant location, not just to rival Anfield as a stadium, but the M&S, what used to be the M&S Bank Arena, the Liverpool Arena, is on the waterfront. And if you're going to stage a gig in Liverpool, you probably want to do it on the waterfront because it's a bit more iconic. I'm slightly sceptical of how much that kind of income now shifts the dial for football teams. I think that is part of the thinking of building the stadiums, but I'm not sure, given the balance of revenues, whether staging 2 or 3 gigs a year. I mean, Guns N' Roses, I think, have played Anfield. Bruce Springsteen maybe did as well. As you say, Kendrick's playing Villa Park. You see it at Spurs most frequently. In terms of the amount of money it brings in, given how much the broadcasting revenue is worth, I don't think it's transformational in the way that it would have been in the 90s. If you'd been able to repurpose a stadium in the 90s to stage massive gigs, or to have an F1 deal as Spurs do, whatever it might be, that 15, 20, 30 million quid of commercial revenue, which is a huge amount of money, obviously, would have been transformational. Now it's a supplementary revenue stream. And I think for Everton, the primary appeal of the stadium, obviously it's expanding the crowd. It's been able to kind of get, another 15,000 people in every other Saturday, which does start to kind of have a significant effect on your finances. I think as much as anything, it's status. I think it's the sense that Goodison Park, as sort of full of memory and as evocative as it is, felt like an old stadium. And Everton have, since I think 95, been thinking about trying to move. Under Peter Johnson was the chairman when they first sort of mooted the idea of leaving Goodison. And I think there's an element of an awareness that you need a modern, kind of sleek, state-of-the-art stadium to look and feel like a modern super club. And that's what Everton's ambition is and should be, because that's what Everton's traditional role in English football. I don't know if the amount of money they can make from concerts and ancillary use of the stadium will necessarily translate into £70 million playmakers. Every little helps, don't get me wrong, but it's not the bulk of the money that the club will raise.
Rory makes a really interesting point there because it kind of has to be everything, right? It can't just be concerts. I mean, like Everton want this to be a 365-day-a-year stadium, as they've framed it to us. They want conferences there, business conferences there on non-match days. They want the concerts, and they will have a license for a certain number of concerts each year. Have to remember as well that Bramley Moore Dock, currently the stadium there, is down for Euro 2028. So that's a big boost not only to the football club, but the city of Liverpool in general, and potentially what that will bring. But the idea here is that Goodison has no corporate facilities whatsoever. I think it has about 8 or 9 boxes, and they are all sold out already. So when they want to bring over execs to explore the city and to get to know the football club for whatever reason, they really, really struggle. I remember being in corporate. The one time I was in corporate at Goodison, I was actually in a temporary facility outside the Park End stand. You compare that to what you get at Arsenal, even Liverpool now, and it's a world away. And that's where almost overnight Everton's ability to host high-end clients, if you want to call them that, it rises exponentially. That's really important. So too the 13-ish thousand extra seats. But also they have owners in the Friedkin Group who are perfectly set up to capitalize on some of these opportunities too. They want a naming rights deal. They're looking and speaking to people right now. They also want to just commercialize the stadium. I think that there's a feeling in general from them that if you go into the equivalent in the US, you will see sponsors plastered everywhere around the stadium. And this might be unpalatable to some kind of English football fans, but they get the sense that that space is underutilized commercially in English football stadia. So I think there will be a huge drive to increase revenues across the board. And even if it only ends up being, and I'm just going to pluck a hypothetical figure here, even if it ends up being 30, 40 million pound a year in extra revenue to Everton, in the PSR age, that's 30 to 40 million pound that the squad did not have. Like even in January, Everton spent no money, despite still being in a relegation battle, because they were so constrained by those regulations. So like this process has to be incremental. But for the first time in a while, Everton fans can kind of see how this is all going to fit together and how it's going to help, and then how the club can hopefully then start to rise up the table.
That's a really good point. That era of PSR, I'd not thought of that before. That in the era of PSR, which is obviously being replaced by squad cost in the summer, as the kind of financial rules that Man City will try and overturn. It is like that those incremental revenues, and Paddy's right to use that word. I think they are significant because that is suddenly an extra 30-40 million quid that gives you a ceiling. And we've seen like Newcastle struggle. Not There's this kind of perception, I think, that Newcastle and Villa haven't spent money and they're being held down by the sort of oppressive elite or whatever. The reality is they've spent huge sums of money. It's just that they can't rapidly increase their commercial and corporate take at the same time. So you need to find ways of maximising that. And it might be a few years before Everton really see the benefits of it. But the thing about sponsors is fascinating as well. And Everton are maybe the best example. There is a tension for English football fans, I think, for Premier League fans who consider themselves like legacy fans, people who are in England, particularly local fans, that you want to feel that your club is a sort of bastion of tradition. You want your club to feel like it did when you were a kid. You don't want it to sell its soul. You don't want it to be like the Dunkin' Donuts stand at Bramley-Moore Dock, where everything is sponsored. You don't want to have like shirts plastered in logos, Pepito's pizza rolls or whatever. Like it just feels tacky and cheap. But at the same time, Everton fans, and this isn't me having a go at Everton fans, I think fans of all clubs are the same. You want your £60 million midfielder. We don't make it clear enough that those two things are related. Like if you want this league that we have where Bournemouth can outspend AC Milan, and you get even teams that are relegation threatened have got like 7 internationals lining up for them, you have to sell your soul. Because you're trying to compete with clubs and overtake clubs in Europe who've got way more history than you. Like AC Milan are a bigger club than Bournemouth. Obviously, they're a bigger club than Bournemouth. They will sign those players if you don't sell every single piece of like commercial real estate. So it kind of crystallizes that sense of like it's really exciting for Everton to move into a new stadium, to finally have that feeling of, and Paddy's captured it really well, I think, like that feeling of being a club moving forward after so long drifting and running through treacle. Everton now can use this as the platform to become what Everton should be, or a modern version of what Everton should be. But that's going to involve moving away from tradition. It's going to involve accepting a degree of Americanization. And none of us really like it. But that's how you get the Premier League. That's why all of us have jobs. That is why there is an endless array of podcasts about English football. Because it's an unpalatable reality, but it is reality.
Yeah, Adrian, back to sort of Rory's point on that. If Everton want to operate like, one of the biggest clubs now, new stadium and all that, is there an element of having to sell one's soul to bring in all this extra money?
Yeah, I found myself nodding along to most of what Rory said there. It's true. It's fact. And look, most players that they sign won't really care about the tradition of Everton. They won't really be bothered whether it's at Goodison Park or at the brand new stadium. In fact, they'll be much more allured to the brand new stadium. Playing in front of a vastly increased audience, won't they? In beautiful facilities, which aren't the case currently at Goodison Park. It probably has held them back financially, but also in terms of appeal for top quality players to come in. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times. I do think that over time they will now be able to attract better players, not just because they're bringing in more revenues, but because just the whole look of the club, the feel of it, is more modern. It's more big time. It's and that's what players want to be a part of. I came through at Arsenal, so for me, leaving Highbury, that was painful because I had so many memories of it, and there was so much success associated with Arsenal during that period. I think between 89 and 2006, Arsenal won 5 titles. They won numerous FA Cups, the Cup Winners' Cup. There's a lot of good times there towards the back end of the Highbury era. So for Arsenal, it felt like a risk to move at a time where opponents hated going there. That small pitch, the vibrant crowd, because they were loving it. They're loving what they were seeing on the pitch. It was a horrible place for opponents to go at the time when Arsenal moved. And that isn't really the case, is it, at Everton at the moment? So maybe the fresh start for them in a brand new environment will change the perceptions of opponents as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, they're certainly going to be more attractive to players.
Yeah, Paddy, one of the interesting things from Highbury to the Emirates was always, I guess that extra 10% of being so close to the crowd, that extra bit, even the dimensions of the pitch at Arsenal were,
Mhm.
were integral to how that team played. I mean, you look at the change of atmosphere from somewhere like Upton Park to where West Ham are right now. I mean, it's so different. And fair enough, that stadium wasn't necessarily built for football, but it's still a football stadium right now. Do you think Everton, it will take some time to regenerate that extra Goodison roar in this new environment?
What will Bramley Moore be like? I suppose that's the big question, and there's been a lot of focus during the design stage here to make sure it does feel right and that atmosphere translates across. I think it's about a mile separates Goodison Park from the new stadium. So can they get that atmosphere as it was at Goodison Park? One of the things they've done through the American architect Dan Meese, who designed the stadium, of course, was create a particularly steep gradient for the stands. So you get this sense that the supporters are almost on top of the players. You're right to reference Highbury. Goodison's the same. These places, they're so compact that players can hear every single thing supporters are saying. And I think that can be both a blessing and a curse. Like, Goodison can be the best place for a home player to play. It can also, if we're being honest, be one of the worst because you can hear the grumbles and you can hear what's being said in the crowd. So I think this will be a fresh start, and I think it's a club that needs that fresh start. I mean, like, if you think about the last 3 or 4 years, Everton have been limping over the line, just straining to get through to that new dawn, and they're so close now that everyone's looking at this in a positive sense. I think that leaving Goodison is bittersweet, but people know it's necessary now. People know that there is potentially, as we've said, a bright future there. And I think now the focus will start to turn to, can we replicate that atmosphere? Can we do it? I think the design helps, but until you're in there, until you experience it, until it becomes yours and you feel it and you start to create your own experiences there, I think that's a tough ask.
Yeah, Adrian, as a player, did you respond better or worse being so close to the crowd? Because as Paddy says, someone said, "You're not that great, mate." I mean, that just play on the mind when you're about to just whip a wonderful crossing, doesn't it?
Do you know what?
I
It's
tried to be
more.
polite there. They say worse things, but
Yeah, look, Arsenal fans were always very nice to me. I'll have you know. They always are. When you're an academy player coming through, they look after you. But I think that's more of an issue at smaller stadiums. If I'm honest, I did find it tougher when there were smaller crowds where you really could hear individuals describing something. But I got to be honest, when you're down there on the pitch, whether there's 36,000 there or 66,000 there, it's kind of just noise. And it's, you don't it's a good atmosphere either way. I do think that players in general enjoy having the steep stands next to the pitch. They quite like it. It's a better experience, pretty more fun to play in those kind of stadiums. So I'm glad to hear Everton's design sort of accommodates that. But yeah, and look, it's a cliche, but the pitch is still, it's green, it's got white lines. It doesn't really matter to footballers. It really doesn't. I just think the only thing you get, and is at Highbury. That virtually the whole stadium was season ticket holders by the end because there was so much demand, and so fans were sitting next to the same people for years and years and years. Great friendships, great bonds around the ground, and they saw good football at that time, and the atmosphere was amazing. I know it was called the Library, but it was great. And then you move, and then people get split up. It feels different, and a load of new people come in who maybe don't have the same passion, that maybe are there just as tourist fans or whatever, and that is where the atmosphere can change, and yeah, it's important that you don't lose that passion that Goodison has got, I think, because it's taken a long time for Emirates Stadium to get to that point. There was one moment where Henry, obviously the king of Highbury, comes back on loan, scores that great goal against Leeds United, where the whole stadium was so noisy, it was frightening. But that was it was years and years after they moved. And I would only really say that in the last 2.5 years under Mikel Arteta, where the team's been brilliant, that Emirates has felt like home for Arsenal. We're getting towards 20 years now. So there'll be a period of adjustment for sure for Everton, but success on the pitch will change it. If Everton can provide, a cup success or, great moments, great memories early on in their time at the new stadium, then it will feel like home.
The fact that Adrian says that it's taken a while for the Emirates to feel like home for Arsenal, I think the club have taken quite a lot of deliberate steps in the last few years to try and improve the atmosphere. I think they were really conscious of it. So they subsidise flags. A lot of the flag groups that you see are kind of work in conjunction with the club, which is fairly standard now. I think they've provided a space for the Ashburton Army, the Arsenal Ultras, which is a concept that other fans tend to sort of snicker about a bit. But the club have helped a lot. And it's interesting that as more and more teams have moved stadiums, I think clubs have learned the right and wrong ways to do it. So West Ham is seen in many ways as being maybe not an ideal kind of blueprint to follow. Spurs, I think, have been much more successful in doing it. They learned a lot from just the fact that Arsenal and West Ham had done it before them. So Everton have consulted a lot with Tottenham over how to kind of manage the migration of tickets. And I did a piece Paddy alluded to earlier a little while ago about how fans were choosing their tickets in the new stadium, because to me that's fascinating. You have a blank canvas, you have 53,000 seats. What's the best one? Which one do you want? Like you can do literally sit wherever you like. And a lot of them were saying that there's almost this natural kind of transition where, younger fans, teenagers, people in their 20s, who'd had to take whatever ticket they could get at Goodison, they are all migrating to, I think, the lower south stand, which is where the safe standing area is. Then you've got people who are a little bit older, but maybe want to sit down a bit during the game, but want to be in the atmosphere. They're going to the upper south. And it may well be that what you get at Bramley-Moore Dock is quite an organic and very rare opportunity to get like-minded fans together in a way that clubs in older stadiums just can't do, because it's too complicated to move season tickets around. That might well help Everton, because it might mean that when you have that first league game at Bramley-Moore next season, that in the lower south, which will be the kind of engine of the atmosphere, you've got a load of people who are 19, 20, 21. They're all a little bit tipsy and they all want to sing. And that's kind of what you need. And it may be that clubs elsewhere look at what Everton are able to do in terms of generating that atmosphere and think, we need to find a way to enable those types of fans to sit with each other.
A new era beckons for Everton. Thank you so much for your time, gents. Rory, Paddy, and Adrian as well. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.